major and global studies. So, anthropology studies people from all cultures. So he's made that shift from not only studying about or leading people in other countries about leadership, but in our country. And there are different cultures of leadership in our country. So pay attention to how people make the shift from their major to their job. And he has several jobs. Okay. So you'll see that he's working as a contractor for his main person, DRYVE Leadership. But he also has some other things going on that is very typical of people nowadays. But many of you are going to be good leaders. If you are strong in the humanities and in people skills, leadership may be something that you're really good at. And Tyler is very good at it. I was his advisor when he was at MTSU and he graduated in 2016. So he's not that much older than you guys. So Tyler, it's all yours.
All right. Can you guys hear me well?
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts how much technology has changed. I mean, like she said, I graduated in 2016, and every client we work with now, the technology setup's different. However, I've never been on a Zoom with this many people. So this is really cool. Thanks for, again, I know that this is part of your day, but thanks for giving me your time. I'm excited to be able to have a conversation with you about kind of what I do, but also what got me to where I'm at. And I say conversation because I can hear all of you well and see you well. So if you have a question in the middle, or I'm talking about something that doesn't make sense, I was going over it with my wife last night. She's like, remember, I didn't know what that word was 2 years ago before you got into this. So you have to just think about it. So if you want to pause me, raise your hand or say, Tyler, hey, I have a question about that. Does not bother me at all. Our whole model and what I currently do is built around collaboration. If we can't have a conversation about it, both people don't understand, we're probably not going to move forward. So with that, I'll talk a little bit about me first. So how the next couple minutes, we have until, what time do we have until? Is it till 1? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Perfect. I want plenty of time to talk to you guys and for you guys to ask questions. But my name's Tyler. I currently work in organizational and leadership development. And so what that is essentially it's a really big word to say. I work with people to design organizational change for people. So we work with leadership all the way down to the bottom of the organization, which is entry level. I am married and have been married for 5 years. We live in Springfield, Missouri. I grew up in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I actually graduated from Oakland High School. So I know that's a rival here and I get that. So we don't like Oakland today, I get it. But with that, I led at Siegel in college, graduated from MTSU. And so I know the Murfreesboro area well, and I really love the Murfreesboro area. Come home for holidays. My wife's from Charlotte, so we alternate back and forth between there. But that is a little bit about me. I will jump into I'm going to take you through a 30,000 foot view of a timeline from where I was at your age and what I was thinking at your age to where I'm at now. And so with that, I've got a little bit. I'm going to go here. There we go. Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so a couple things that have highlighted themselves to me over the 4 years, and it's funny when Dr. Langworthy, I think we talked a couple months ago about the Humanities Academy in high school. I got really excited because I think that one thing I've learned is that people are most often the solution, not the problem. And in the work in humanities, especially in the liberal arts program at MTSU, I learned a lot how to interact with people from all different shapes, sizes, cultures, economic status, whether they're a millionaire or whether they're sitting on the street and do not have a home. It has helped that career path, or the path in college, taught me how to communicate with all different types of people, which is very helpful in my work now. 4 little mantras, like I said, is creativity begins with curiosity. In order to be creative, in order to solve problems creatively, we have to be curious. We have to ask questions we don't know the answer to. I'm sure you're already learning it now, but a great thing about the college program for me through liberal arts and an anthropology major was to learn how to think critically, to see from a different perspective, to see the value that all people offer, even if I don't understand why they think that way. When someone has a different opinion, usually it's for a good reason, and they're coming from, even if I don't agree with the reason, it's outside of agreement, they're coming from a background that has shaped the way that they're thinking and shaped the decisions that they're made. So to think critically and learning how to think critically is absolutely invaluable. One of my partners that I work with DRYVE Leadership Group, he's a bit older than I. He says communication cures confusion. And I have found that to be true time and time again, regardless, again, of the background or the agenda that someone else has. Communication around a subject matter can cure confusion. Sometimes it leads to moving forward together, and sometimes it leads to going different directions, and that's okay, but confusion is no longer an obstacle. Collaboration makes our world a better place. I know when I was in high school and even in college and even now, especially our generation, something about the older generation, maybe they don't operate this way, but I really love working on a team, and I like solving problems with people. One, because you get to share the load, and two, because you get to brainstorm on how it can be better and you have different perspectives. So with that, I'm going to go into people are the solution and the common thread. Since I was in your seat 10 years ago to where it is now, I've found that people are the common thread in business, regardless of how much tech is there. This quote on the side says, in the information age where tech is king, automation is desirable, and change is minute by minute, the ability to communicate and collaborate, think critically, and create alongside others is of the utmost value. And I see that often in my work. I see it every day. For example, I just got out of a meeting with a business partner, and we just closed down a client account. And we work with clients anywhere from 6 months to 3 years, just depending on the need of the client. And I'll go into more detail on that later. So, but we just worked with them for a year. And so what we did is we spent an hour and a half just brainstorming on a whiteboard, saying what worked, what didn't work. And we outlined those, and we outlined what worked and saw the path there. And then we outlined what didn't work. So we're collaborating, two minds, putting stuff on together. We outlined what didn't work, and we talked, how can we make that better? One of the things we highlighted that didn't work with this last client, or didn't work well, right? A challenge was that in the onboarding process, so whenever we bring a client on into partnership, we call it a partnership, we didn't educate the upper level leadership, which in typical organizational structure, upper level leadership makes the big decisions with help of the people around the organization, but upper level leadership makes the big decisions. And so one thing we realized is we didn't educate on the forefront of our engagement with them. We didn't educate them well on why we do what we do. They knew what we did, they hired us, but we didn't educate well on why we do what we do and how we go about doing what we do, which again, I'll talk about a little bit more in the current work bubble down here. But all that to say is through collaboration and a bunch of communication, an hour and a half of communication, we came to a conclusion that during this when we onboard a next client, which is going to start at the beginning of November, we're going to have to spend some extra time and energy and resources on educating upper level leadership. So the CEOs, the CFOs, the COOs, of what it is or why it is we do what we do and how we've seen it work in the past. Because if you don't have, we call it buy-in. If you don't have buy-in at all levels of an organization, it's usually harder than when you have buy-in from all levels, because then you're moving together in a direction. But well, before I keep going, any questions so far on any of that? I know sometimes I can talk fast, especially when it's something I like. Any questions or any thoughts? Or okay, perfect. So the College of Liberal Arts is what I went into at MTSU. I didn't start out that way. So actually, when I was sitting a junior year of high school, my advisors in high school and college have been really helpful. So really helpful in terms of helping me think critically, not giving me the answer, but helping me think about what I want to do. If I chose this, what would that mean? And that sort of helping me think critically about the direction that I want to go. But started out in pre-med because I knew at 18, I wanted to help people. I really liked people. Even if it was hard to get along sometimes. I really wanted to help people. But I started in pre-med, and through taking classes and staying curious about what it looked like to help people, I realized in my first semester of college that organic chemistry, if that was the weed out class for pre-med, I was the one that got weeded out. I talked to a professor that first semester, and I said, so how much more is, what else is in this pathway? And he's like, well, if you don't like organic chem, or you struggled in organic chem, you might want to rethink 10 years of medicine. And I was like, thank you for being honest, and I don't have to rethink it. I'm done. So with that, I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I liked talking to people and spending time with people and collaborating. I didn't really have that language at 17, 18, 19, but I knew that I liked that. So I went to left organic chem, went to organizational communication, and I took a couple classes in organizational communications, which really helped, because we're talking about communication, and that's one of the main skill sets that I've used today and have developed over the past 10 years, written and verbal. But I didn't want to just focus on speeches and talking at people. I wanted to get better at talking with people. And in order to get better at talking with people, I think you have to understand perspective, and you have to understand where people are coming from. So finally, I think it was the middle of sophomore year of college at MTSU, I took a class called Intro to Globalization. And I had a professor, his name's Dr. Corey Perkins. And I remember pulling him aside after the first couple of classes saying, this is Intro to Globalization is a massive name. Tell me, what else is out there with this class? And he said, globalization, and also it's globalization and human geography are the same major track. So I went ahead and looked up the definition, because I definitely couldn't repeat it for you. But human geography is a branch of geography that deals with humans and their relationships with communities, cultures, economies, and interactions with the environment by studying their relations with and across locations. So in my 19-year-old, 20-year-old brain, it said, so human geography is learning how to interact with different people. That seems really valuable. I'm a mediocre typer. I really know how to press play to listen to music, and I know how to use Word and PowerPoint and all of that stuff. But past that, again, remember, it's crazy what 10 years. I didn't get an Instagram until I was a freshman in college, which is nuts because I don't feel like it's been that long. But I didn't get an Instagram until freshman year of college. And so technology wasn't the thing on my forefront. And so I was like, I want to learn how to interact with different people, ask questions, have conversation. And so that conversation ended with, this major is really enlightening and can help you learn how to communicate and think critically, because none of the tests in that class were marking a box. It was more so explain why your answer, explain what brought you to this conclusion. And so I thought, wow, this seems interesting, and I think I will enjoy that. So I dove right into that Intro to Globalization, thanks to having a professor who really challenged me, again, to think critically. As I got into my major classes, I began to realize how effective it is to learn the background of different people and how to interact with different people. Because if you learn where they're coming from, you then have perspective to communicate with them, to ask questions around why they think that way, rather than trying to change their opinion. With your thoughts, you get the opportunity to learn why they think that way, and then hopefully come to a solution together. So junior year, I started junior year of college. I was working for Young Life. Actually, I was at Siegel High School as a team leader at Siegel High School, working for Young Life. But then I started a business with one of my best friends, and we were pressure washing and resealing concrete. So at that time, I was working in the for-profit and the nonprofit world, which I'm sure you guys both know are two different sectors of the business space, but operate. We could pick it apart, but they operate similarly, as in they provide a service or a product for a person or group of people, and they are making an income. They make income. Their income structure is different, but they're providing a service or a resource for people in moving forward and growing. So I was working with a nonprofit and working with a for-profit. In that, I learned to really had to communicate. So on the business side, where we were pressure washing and resealing concrete, I had to communicate with not only people who we wanted to do work for, but people who were servicing what we were using to work. So people who were servicing our equipment, people who were going to do extra work for us. So if we had a job that we couldn't handle, I had to communicate with usually I work with some of my Young Life guys and say, hey, I'll pay you to do this for 10 hours if you can do that and get it done by the end of the week. So communication began to highlight itself as a very necessary skill to learn in the for-profit and nonprofit world. And so about a year and a half into that business was my senior year. I got an opportunity. So with the degree that I pursued, you had to study abroad. It could be, I think, 2 weeks up to a year. And in my 20-year-old brain, I was like, what's the closest place to Patagonia? That was where my head went. And I remember thinking, yeah, Patagonia is also not just a brand, which is a great brand, but it's a place at the tip of South America, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I like being outside, and I wanted to ride bikes. And I was like, how can I get to Patagonia? However, through conversation with wiser counsel, it was actually Dr. Langworthy who challenged me with the idea of whatever you do, just make sure you get some credit when you study abroad. And I was like, that's a really good idea. I should get some credit and not just spend a semester, or I wanted to get some credit. So anyways, went to university down in Santiago, Chile. And for reference, Santiago, Chile is about a quarter or a third of the size of New York. So really large city, really big environment to learn in, bunch of universities. I learned a lot again. Spanish was their main language, but I learned how to communicate effectively because I had to get around. The first month was pretty quiet because I didn't know Spanish that well. I was minoring in Spanish, but it's difference between learning a language in a classroom versus total immersion. So learned a lot about communication during that time of my life, and also had to communicate back and forth in North America with my business partner because we were still making decisions on, one, how to keep the business going, but also how to learn. We're both in college, both trying to run a business, which is a challenge in itself. And then I was 2,500 miles south in South America. So communication highlighted itself in college as a necessary skill to learn. And so one of my big takeaways from the 4 years in school, and I took a path towards global studies, but it took me some time to realize the gift of structured and explorative learning. So what I mean by that is in college, it's one of the only opportunities in my, well, other than grade school, but it's one of the only opportunities past 12th grade where you get to have structured learning. You can challenge opinions, challenge thoughts, and still come back to the table, and it's not detrimental to your career. And it's not, it's an opportunity to learn and grow and be curious with people who are leading you and want you to learn and grow and be curious. So it was a really cool opportunity for me that I wasn't really sold on at 18, but over the span of my 4 years, it taught me how to commit to something. It taught me how to stick through things when I really didn't want to go to class or want to do this. I had mentors and I had people in my life who helped me think critically about the decisions I could make. So the implications of doing this or doing that, it helped me think critically. So I say that college was, I was joking around with my wife last night talking about it. She's like, it's funny because we dated in college, and she said, knowing you now and knowing you then, you didn't really like it. It wasn't evident that it was a gift to you because you talked about how you didn't want to go to class, but you really enjoyed learning. And so she said, it's cool to see, hindsight is always 2020, that that college really was a gift for me, the structured and explorative part, especially in the degree that the degree that I got was because they challenged us to think from a different perspective. They challenged us to open up our mind and open up the opportunity to see something from someone else's perspective. So before we're going to move a little bit more into kind of my career now, any questions or thoughts from the degree I had or majoring in college? Yeah.
I just want to ask for the class, with all these changes that you were making in your careers, how did that affect your time at MTSU? Did it extend it, or were you able to graduate? How did that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually graduated in 4 years. which again, my wife makes a joke because she took a semester after, but somehow, some way, my kind of path lined up. So I started in pre-med. It took, prerequisites. Everyone's got to take prerequisites. Unless I think everyone's got to take prerequisites. I don't really know another way. Unless you have a solution to that, that'd be really cool. But started in pre-med, then went to journalism and organizational communication and global studies. But Dr. Langworthy actually helped me. I continue to ask the question is, I don't want to be in here longer than 4 years. So how can these classes stack up, or which ones go and feed into each other? And so with that, a lot of my classes helped roll into, because liberal arts, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Langworthy, but liberal arts has a lot of need for better, like there are some prerequisites for communication and how to communicate better, and whether it's written or oral. And so my classes kind of aligned, and I was able to graduate still on time. But also with that, in my study abroad program, because it was necessary for global studies and human geography, all my classes, I got full credit for all my classes there. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yes, absolutely.
There was another question up here. Somebody else?
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
See you later.
Right here. Go ahead.
So what was your biggest takeaway from studying abroad, and would you recommend it to people?
Oh man, that's a great question. Biggest takeaway from studying abroad. 10 out of 10 would recommend. 10 out of 10 would recommend. I spent 6 months at Universidad de Andrés Bello in Santiago, Chile. Biggest takeaway was it's a lot of times I have a lot of friends, it's not a lot, but quite a few friends that studied abroad, and they were like, I only took six hours. I took 18 hours, like a full class load. I think it was 18 hours or 5 classes. And because of the way it worked out for my degree, it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of work. I mean, I was there with students from all over the North America that were studying in South America. And we kind of carried the workload together, but we went camping. We surfed on the coast of South America. We rode mountain bikes in Bolivia. So it's possible. The biggest takeaway for me was I'm glad that I didn't spend a whole semester just doing one thing, because school was really fun too. I got to learn firsthand how to speak Spanish. All my classes were in Spanish. I got to interact, actually talked to had a conversation last week with one of the students I went there that lives in Chile. He's trying to go to med school in the US, and I'm helping him write his entrance letter or something like that. I'm helping him proofread. And so a 10 out of 10 would recommend. Biggest takeaway is it's possible to do both. It's possible to get credit, and it's possible to have a really good time and learn a lot about culture and travel. I mean, I traveled a ton while I was down there, but still maintain classes. Great question.
Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, so what was the hardest part in transitioning from a university space into a actual career space? Like, what was that transition like, and what was difficult?
Oh, that's a great question. The hardest part transitioning. I would say the freedom, and it was both, because the freedom, I was excited because I didn't have a structure, right? I could do what I want when I wanted with my time, but there's a large learning curve at time management. There's, especially because after I left college, I moved straight into working for a nonprofit. So that's what moved me to Springfield, Missouri. I worked with a nonprofit, and because I had ran a business in college and had structure in college, I wanted the opportunity to have more freedom in my schedule. Well, that freedom proved to be a challenge, because what do you do with your time if no one's handing you things to do or work to do? What do you do with your time? So I had to learn a lot on how to manage my time and how to schedule, when to say no, when to say yes. But that was the biggest, and that, I'm 6 years into my career now, and that's still a big learning lesson of, I mean, up until 18, most of the time your schedule is pretty it's pretty laid out. You need to be at school by a certain time. You leave school at a certain time. You may have sports or extracurricular activities or a job. And then on the weekends, you're hanging with friends. Like, it's a pretty set schedule. But the freedom was a gift, but also a challenge. That great,
Yeah,
great question. I've never had anyone ask that.
another question. So
Yeah.
would you say, which is more powerful, a no or a yes?
Oh man, that's a great question.
For what?
From his position and from his perspective, which is more powerful, no or a yes?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't think one is more powerful than the other. I think if you answer no, you got to ask yourself why you're answering no. What are the implications? So if I say no, for literally, today I had a lunch, not today, but tomorrow I had a lunch meeting with two clients who, so in our organizational structure, we work with whole organizations, so leadership, middle level, entry level. I'm going to keep it that simple. I have a lunch tomorrow that the leaders have not reached out until today, but they are decision makers in the organization. So I had to say no to like a business marketing lunch, like going to meet and greet a bunch of people to have lunch with the executives, because that no is more important, or saying yes to the executives is more important than skipping a lunch for meeting new people. So I don't think one is more powerful. I think learning when to say yes and when to say no. No is a great skill to learn, though. Learning to say no is a great skill, because I think that over the span, since I've gotten out of college and even in college, one of my mentors said it to me when I was, I think, 19 or early in my college career. He said, there's thousands of opportunities if your eyes are open. Learning when to say yes and no is a big thing to learn in your 20s. And I always remember that. But I don't think one is more powerful than the other. Great question. That's a really good question. Anybody else on this? We're going to get a little bit more into the work that I'm currently doing, but these are awesome questions.
Good, yeah, go ahead and talk about your work now.
Perfect. So current work, I kind of summed it up with a sentence, but it's a little bit more than that, but helping solve problems with people through creativity, communication, and collaboration. So current job responsibilities, oversee partnership and with clients. We call it a partnership because it is very much a partnership. It's not, even in the consulting space, it's not, hey, we know all the answers. It's, hey, let us work with you, with your people, to help you find the best answer for your organization. A big responsibility for me right now is coaching and develop mid-level leadership. So mid-level leadership is, if you think about organizational structure in three facets. You've got executive leadership, you got the middle tier, and you got entry level. It is not age specific. It has nothing to do with years in the organization. A lot of times I'll work with mid-level leadership that's either younger or older than me, does not matter. Work in collaboration with the project manager to set up and onboard. So we have a project manager who's actually remote. She works remote, but she lives in town. So she is only virtual, and she does all of the logistics and administrative work for setting up and onboarding new clients and scheduling meetings and all of that sort of stuff. I also work in collaboration with the project manager we use the word co-create a plan that serves the client. So we start with a listening tour. We listen to the whole organization when we begin working with them, and we ask what's working, what's not working. And so, for example, if the organization has 100 people, we're going to do set groups of 10, and we're going to ask what's working, what's not working. We're going to coalesce those results and put them in a document, or we'll put them in a Google Drive. It's not anything formal, but we put them in a Google Drive and we say, hey, here's what we heard your people say. You know, if one person says what's not working is the coffee maker, it's really not working. Okay, like we could talk about that. But if 75 people out of 100 say, hey, the coffee really is awful, then I know it sounds crazy, but it is worth having a conversation about with your leadership, because when you in organizational development, when you take a moment to respond to the small things in an employee or in mid-level leadership's life, trust begins to build. And like, okay, so they saw this problem and they're working on it, so they care, which is a huge deal. And a lot of the work we do is helping leaders and their people bridge the gap and have that conversation that normally just goes by. We effectively use our resources and tools to support client needs and directions. What that means is currently with DRYVE Leadership, I work with a guy my teammate is a guy who's been doing it for 35 years. He's been in the consulting space for 20, and he's built a lot of resources and tools, and I've partnered with him to work and use those. So different types of business systems, how to develop a organizational chart, which an organizational chart is from executive leadership to entry level, what that looks like, kind of in a Christmas tree diagram, and proactively engage in the community, bent towards collaborative partnerships. So we're always asking when we're out at, for example, that lunch meeting that I could have went to yesterday is, hey, I'm always asking, what would it look like to collaborate with this? Even if we're not working with them in partnership, what would it look like to collaborate? And you guys know this, especially as technology is just such a large piece of your life. Collaboration is huge. We work with a company right now, actually, that does, I'm using numbers to show you the size, that does 60 million in a yearly revenue, and they have 4 employees, but they partner with 16 other subcontractors. So essentially they have 25 employees, but under their LLC, under their license is 4 employees, which is crazy. 10, 15 years ago, that was not a thing. The ability to work remote, the ability to collaborate in partnership under your own LLC. LLC is a licensed liability company. Anyway, so those are current job responsibilities. Some other responsibilities that I have taken on because the company I'm working with is a bit earlier in we're a 3-year-old company. I write a lot of relevant articles. So relevant articles relevant to what we're learning with clients or what clients are experiencing. Research and relay topical information. So one of the clients I'm working with right now is they're building what we would call a leadership development pipeline. So what does it look like when you enter our company, and what does it look like to grow within our company? And so Harvard Business Review just put out a pretty extensive article on growing your people remote. So what it looks like to grow and develop your people when you never see them in person, which is a new problem for business space, for or nonprofit. How do you grow and develop your people? And a lot of it looks like this, having Zoom conversations and meeting with them consistently. Another responsibility is attend community events. I try to do that once a week. Sometimes that falls to the wayside, but that is something that I try to do pretty frequently. And then our own internal systems development. So this morning, you guys, I already shared with you an example of us kind of reflecting on what went well with that client, what did not. That's internal systems development. Specifically this morning, we were talking about onboarding. So those are my current responsibilities for DRYVE Leadership Group. And Dr. Langworthy mentioned I'm part of another project called Well Outdoor Retreats. And that is a partnership with two friends, 2 former clients, and turned into friends, vice versa. It's a chicken and the egg situation. But 2 guys that live out in Denver, Colorado. One of them works in investments and the other one is an adventure journalist. And so we got together and we were asking the question, one thing we all 3 share is being outside and kind of doing adventure outside, mountain biking, trail running, hiking, all of that stuff. And we were like, what would it look like to bring leadership development? So bring people who spend a lot of their time in an office, stereotyping, spend a lot of their time in an office, talking about strategy, talking about systems, talking about things that are moving their business forward. What would it look like to take them and get them outside? So that is a very new project. We launched in right before COVID started. So if you can imagine, COVID put a hold on that, or taught us a lot of lessons. We had to be creative with how we solved. We've done 2 trips so far, and those have gone as well as they can. We're learning a lot from that. But the question, again, and there you see just a gift of what I think college and the ability to think creatively and stay curious taught me is how can we get people who traditionally spend their time and their work weeks 40 to 60, 70 hours inside, how can we get them outside to have a good time, but also talk about leadership development topics? Let's see. Any questions on the job responsibilities piece? This is currently what most of my work consists of. Yeah.
So you have a lot of stuff on that list, and earlier you were
Uh-huh.
talking about your time management. So I was just kind of curious how you go about managing your time and planning your schedule and all that stuff.
Excellent question. So at the beginning of the week, I usually, unless absolutely necessary, I don't schedule anything from 8 to 10 a.m. on Monday mornings. And I will call that in my notebook or I use Google Calendar. I call it week upload. And I give myself 2 hours. Sometimes rarely does it take 2 hours, but it gives me the freedom to look at last week, the week before, and look at the week that's coming up. And what do I need to do? What are the top 3 priorities for the week? And what are the top things I need to take care of for the day? And then how can I space that out over the week? So I do a weekly upload on Monday mornings. And then on Friday afternoons, I do a Friday download. And that ideally that happens middle of the afternoon on Friday, but it ebbs and flows. Last week I didn't get to it till 4 o'clock. But another answer to that question is I break my work week up by 35 to 40 hours because, again, and you guys will definitely have to, depending on which direction you go, the autonomy piece is coming. The guy that I partnered with DRYVE Leadership Group, he literally today we talked about how that we're looking at hiring somebody next. And the thing he kept talking about was like, I don't want to supervise their schedule. I want them to be able to manage their own schedule, which is great news to me. It may be great news to you, and it may not. You may not want to work in an environment like that, and that's completely okay. My wife is a teacher. She loves 8 to 3. She loves 8 to 3 and 8 to 4:30. And teachers, I know you work longer than that and you do a bunch, but I'm saying she loves that structure. But for me, the autonomy piece was huge. So I've had to give and take. Like the first 2 years out of college, after I left that nonprofit, I started a business. And so I had to be rigid with my structure, and it didn't work that well. So I usually break up by percentages. So right now, 60% of my hours is spent with client, like actually engagement, 25 on business development, and 15 on learning or something like that. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question too. Any other questions on that? On current responsibilities? Yeah.
So it was like while you were at college, you had a company, right?
Correct.
But like how did you have like the time while you were overseas?
Yeah. So when I was overseas, I did none of the operational work. So I didn't do a thing because I mean, literally I couldn't. But I did talk with my business partner. We would talk once every 2 weeks maybe and check in on what he had going. If I needed to send any emails or help write. So one of the things that the skill sets that again are helpful currently, but also that I learned a lot in college was business communication is a lot more than just speaking, like writing contracts or writing proposals. And they sound like big words, but when we were 20, I would look up how to write a proposal and we'd kind of mimic it and then write it to the client, speak to the client we were talking to. So knowing the audience, but I did no work while I was in South America, no actual work. I kind of helped move the business along to the best of my ability, but yeah, good question.
Another question.
So
Yeah.
you talk a lot about communication and how important it is. So I was just curious what you think the most effective way for someone to learn communication and skills like that would be.
I think recently one of the lessons that's highlighted myself is not to be unafraid of asking the dumb question. And so, especially when communicating with someone whom you don't normally communicate with, or whom you normally may not have conversation with, but being okay with asking the question and then letting them give you an answer, and then asking more questions. And also too, I think effectively learning communication takes practice. And it's communication, and I'm sure you got communication's two-way street, right? A lot of times talking at people, that's not communication, that's talking at people. But having a conversation means you listen, you reflect back what you heard, and then you ask, hey, does that make sense? Are we on the same page? So I typically in live conversation always ask frequently, especially if it's a small group, hey, are we all on the same page? Are we tracking together? And if someone looks confused, hey, tell me what you're confused about, or tell me what's hanging you up. And most people will say, well, I don't really understand that part. Okay. And then even bolder with the question is, well, depending on the nature of the meeting, right? Depending on what's happening, is this something we could come back to, or is this something that's going to prohibit us from moving forward? And if it's like, well, I just don't think I can make progress without having clarity on this. It sounds like so I say curiosity. Curiosity really helps communication. And then another one that I'm learning right now, and I kind of talked about this with the other question about business, is learning my audience. For instance, in a recent interaction with executive leadership, I like details. I like the why behind the what, but they don't care. In this specific environment, they did not care. They're like, just give me the 30,000 foot view, move on. And so I learned, after talking for 20 minutes, this leader was getting hung up on details that really didn't matter to him. And so knowing my audience has really helped. That's a newer lesson I'm learning, is knowing my audience, who I'm talking to, kind of what they expect. But practice, man, practice really helps. Being unafraid to ask the dumb questions has really helped me, and still helps me. Great question.
Okay, we're about out of our time. Tyler, is there anything you want to just wrap up with for us?
Yeah, I had a piece on that might be helpful it's about skills that I have seen that are valuable in currently what I'm doing, but also in people who are doing similar work. So, and to the guy who just asked this question, listening and asking questions, curiosity. Business writing has been a great skill. I actually just finished a class on, I can't remember the name, but it's an online learning platform, which there's a ton out there. Business writing, knowing your audience, how to write to your audience, how to write to two audiences. Project management, so being able to ask who, what, when, where, and how often. Delegation, we can't do it all. That's been a very, very hard lesson to learn, on how to hand stuff off. Problem solving, which takes a lot of collaboration. Project implementation, so after you decide on what you're going to do with the project, how do we implement it? Who needs to do what? When do we need to do it? What's it going to take to do it? Time management, we kind of talked about. Adaptability, I know you guys know this, but with tech changing one of the biggest, hardest lessons I'm learning right now is every company we work with uses different technology. And has different systems for Microsoft Teams or Microsoft Word or Asana, which is a task management platform. Basic technology, and then trust. We're going to, even though we're entering into an age where technology is just all over the place, we gotta work with people. People solve people problems. I think that's something I think. But yeah, that's really all I got.
Are there any other overall questions for Tyler? You got another one right here, Tyler.
What's your
Yeah.
what's your favorite color?
What's your favorite color?
What's your favorite color?
Favorite color?
Favorite color.
It's blue.
That's not really a good one.
He says you passed that test.
Oh, they got him with black.
All right, can we give a round of applause? Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was good to talk with you.
Yeah.